Okay, this is chapter 3, storage, storing food. After receiving the foods properly, they must be immediately moved to appropriate storage areas. The most common types of food storage include refrigeration storage, freezer storage, dry storage, storage in ice. We will discuss each of these individually. However, certain aspects are common for all types of storage and are described below. FIFO, first in, first out. An important aspect of food storage is to be able to use food products before their use by or expiration date. In this regard, stock rotation is very important. The common sense approach of first in, first out method of stock rotation prevents waste of food products and ensures quality. The first step in implementing the FIFO method of stock rotation is to date products. Marking the products with a date allows food workers to know which product was received first. This way, the older stock is moved to the front and the newly received stock is placed in the back. Storage containers. It is always best to store food in their original packaging. However, when it is removed to another container, take extra care to avoid contamination. Only use food containers that are clean, non-absorbent, and are made from food-grade material intended for such use. Containers made from metal may react with certain type of high-acid foods such as sauerkraut, citrus juices, tomato sauce, etc. Plastic food-grade containers are the best choice for these types of foods. Containers made of copper, brass, tin, and galvanized metal should not, and I repeat, should not be used. The use of such products is prohibited. Reusing cardboard containers to store cooked foods is also, and I repeat also, a source of contamination. Lining containers with newspapers, menus, or other publication before placing food is also prohibited, as chemical dyes from these can easily leach into foods. Wow. Foods should only be stored in designated areas. Storing foods in passageways, restrooms, garbage areas, utility rooms, etc. would subject these to contamination. Raw foods must also be stored below and away from cooked foods to avoid cross-contamination. Right? Refrigerated storage. This type of storage is typically used for holding potentially hazardous foods as well as perishable foods for short periods of time, a few hours to a few days. An adequate number of efficient refrigerated units are required to store potentially hazardous cold foods. By keeping cold foods cold, the microorganisms that are found naturally on these foods are kept to a minimum. Cold temperatures does not kill microorganisms. However, it slows down their growth. Prepackaged cold foods must be stored at temperatures recommended by the manufacturer. This is especially important when dealing with vacuum-packed foods, modified atmosphere packages, and sous vide foods. Smoked fish is required by the health code to be stored at 38 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Fresh meat, poultry, and other potentially hazardous foods must be stored at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below, while frozen foods must be stored at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below. For foods to be maintained at these temperatures, refrigerators and freezers must be operating at temperatures lower than 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 0 degrees Fahrenheit, respectively. Thermometers placed in the warmest part of a refrigerated unit are necessary to monitor the temperature of each unit. The rule of storage, first in, first out, FIFO, ensures that older deliveries are used up before newer ones. In practicing FIFO, first in, first out, the very first step would be to date all products as they are received. The next step is to store the newer products behind. Okay, you want the old ones first, new ones last. Okay? Refrigerated storage. The following rules are important in making sure that foods are safe during refrigerated storage. Okay, so you see right here. Store cooked foods above raw foods to avoid cross-contamination. Keep cooked food items covered unless they are in the process of cooling, in which case they must be covered after being cooled to 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? Avoid placing large pots of hot foods in a refrigerator. This will cause the temperature of the refrigerator to rise and other foods will be out of temperature. Putting a hot pot in there could melt the daggone cool stuff. Store foods away from dripping condensate, at least 6 inches above the floor, and with enough space between items to encourage air circulation. So you got to give them space so you have air circulation. Right. Freezer storage. Freezing is an excellent method for prolonging the shelf life of foods. By keeping foods frozen solid, the bacterial growth is minimal at best. However, if frozen foods are thawed and then refrozen, then harmful bacteria can reproduce to dangerous levels, then thawed for the second time. In addition to that, the quality of the food is also affected. Never refreeze thawed foods. Instead, use them immediately. Keep the following rules in mind for freezer storage. 1. Use the first in, first out FIFO method of stock rotation. 2. All frozen foods should be frozen solid with temperature at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. 3. Always use clean containers that are clearly labeled and marked and have proper and secure lids. Next. Allow adequate space in between food containers to allow for proper air circulation. And finally, never use the freezer for cooling hot foods. When receiving multiple items, always store the frozen foods first, then foods that are to be refrigerated, and finally, the non-perishable dry goods.